Welcome to the Pursuing Points podcast, where it's all about the pursuit of credit card points and miles today so that you can travel the world free of charge tomorrow. And now, your host, Peter Foti.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 25th Pursuing Points podcast episode. I am your host, as I have been for the previous 24, Peter Foti. So I hope everyone is enjoying their long weekend. Today is Monday, September 3rd, which is Labor Day, so hopefully everybody has a day off and you're taking it to rest and relax. I am bringing to you this podcast, which I'm actually super excited about. And really the reason I am excited about it is not because it's another episode of the podcast or because it's the quarter century mark, but because this was rather serendipitous as far as how this episode came to be. So before I get into what we're going to talk about today, first I just want to say thank you to those of you who left some feedback on the iTunes page or left an iTunes review. Like I said before, that's super appreciated. It definitely helps out the show. So if you find that this provides you any sort of value, I appreciate it. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in here. So let me set the stage. Yesterday, I was booking a train ticket, as I have done probably close to a half a dozen times so far in 2018. The ticket was for an Amtrak train departing out of New York City, which is Penn Station is where I get the train, and taking me to Philadelphia. So I have a bunch of family in Philadelphia. And of course, before I moved to New York, I'd never been on an Amtrak as far as I know, unless I did it so as a child. And I really didn't know what to expect. But what I've come to really love and appreciate about the trains is a couple things. One is cost. And I don't necessarily mean the cost of the ticket because, frankly, in some cases you end up paying just as much as you would pay for an airfare. More what I'm talking about is cost of getting to your departure station, right? So for me, I live in Midtown Manhattan, and to get to JFK or LaGuardia, if you take like an Uber or a Lyft, it'll cost you like maybe $50. Like to JFK specifically, right? Which is where I just was. So I recently did a weekend trip to upstate New York, and to and from JFK, right? To JFK was a $50 Uber ride. On the way back, I took the subway, which was $7.75 because you take the air train and then you transfer to your desired subway. And of course, you could pay a little bit more and take the LIRR. I don't do that just because where it drops me off isn't super conducive to me like getting home in a reasonable period of time. But I do think it actually would be a little bit faster. So anyway, it's $50 to take an Uber. And of course, anyone who's listening, like, yes, you could take the subway there. But generally, when I take flights, I try to leave first thing in the morning. That's like always been my strategy. I was a non-revenue standby passenger for a number of years because my mother is a flight attendant at one of the major airlines. And so one of the things we always had to do was try to take the first flight out, because that's how you ensured that. Because basically, what happens is if the first flight of the day gets delayed or canceled, everything after that is going to be pretty messed up. And so your best chance to get on a flight as a non-revenue standby is the first flight of the day. It's also the flight of the day that most people tend to miss for any number of reasons. And I still sort of use that strategy, right? Even as a paying passenger now, I try to leave as early as possible. I just want to get there. I want to get it over with. I don't want to deal with delays or cancellations if I can help it. So that's my strategy. And in the morning, I don't want to take the subway because they don't necessarily run on the same schedule at, say, 4 in the morning that they do at, say, 9 a.m. And I just don't want to risk it. I like to get there nice and early. That's just kind of me. So anyway, one of the reasons I really like it is cost, but also speed. Getting to Penn Station for me, a couple blocks away. If I'm feeling lazy, I can take an Uber, although most likely I'll end up walking because it's, 10 blocks maybe, 34th Street, Penn Station, not that far. So I really like that. And then the other thing that I really like about the trains is that there's no security, right? And of course, I understand that we have security and we need it to keep us safe. But even with TSA PreCheck, you still can find yourself standing in line and then, getting to your terminal and your gate. And it's like this whole process. At the train station, at least in my experience, and of course, it's somewhat limited, right? I've only really spent time in the Penn Station Amtrak station, as well as the Philadelphia Market Street station. But in both of those cases, I can show up within 5 minutes of my train departing and just get on the train, right? They check your ticket once you're on board. It's fantastic. The third thing, they offer business class, and of course, it's really not comparable to airline business class in a lot of ways, insofar as there's no real service. It's really just the better seat. And for me, frankly, that's why I choose to fly first class in the air anyway. I don't really need that sort of like attentive service, although it's nice. I really just do it for the larger seat because I'm a bigger guy. And so on Amtrak, the trains that I take, New York to Philly, you can get them for as cheap as, say, $39, something like that. But generally what I'll do is I'll pay the $69, which is basically that $39 fare plus the $30 business class upgrade. So I use Amtrak anytime I'm going to Philly. And frankly, anytime I am traveling within the Northeast and it makes economical sense for me to get on the train, I will. Obviously, in some cases, it doesn't always work out, right? Like when I go to upstate, the trains, you're going to be on those things for like 6 hours versus if you get on a plane, it's going to take you like 45 minutes. So it doesn't always make sense, but when it does, I really enjoy it. So that's sort of me setting the stage for yesterday. I was trying to book a train from New York to Philly on Amtrak, Penn Station and Market Street. The trip itself is like an hour and a half. You make 3 stops, Newark, Trenton, and then you're there. And I really enjoy it. I like getting on the train. I think it's really quick, and I enjoy the experience. So I added the fare to my cart. I then proceeded to try and check out, at which point I was offered a credit card sign-up bonus. Now, the credit card in question is the Amtrak Guest Rewards card from Bank of America. The publicly available sign-up bonus for this card is 20,000 points, 20,000 bonus points. And at first glance, what's really interesting about the credit card marketplace right now is like 100,000 is like the big number, right? Everybody wants 100,000 point sign-up bonus. Frankly, Chase, they had the best sign-up bonus of all time, I think, with the Sapphire Reserve. Some of this other stuff that's coming out with like Starwood, 100,000. When you think about it, 100,000 Starwood points in post-merger is equivalent to between 30 and 35,000 pre-merger, which is not to say it's bad. It's just to say that it feels like more of a marketing gimmick and they want to get people excited about the 6-figure bonus. And if there's one thing I can caution you against, it's just don't necessarily be taken away or taken back by that number, right? Understand what the value really is. And so in the case of Amtrak, 20,000 points, it doesn't actually sound like much. But to give you some context, the same ticket that I purchased, which was $69 each way in business, would have cost 2,300 points each way, which will, for the sake of this podcast, I will just say that I'm going to round up and say it's 5,000 points round trip, right, versus $138, right? So 20,000 points divided by 5,000, that means I can do 4 round trips of this same fare, okay, spending 20,000 points, or I would have had to spend 4 times 138, which is 405, 500 and some odd dollars. So for me, the 20,000 point sign-up bonus actually represents about $500 or more in value. And of course, we haven't even talked about any of the other benefits. But, of course, what's interesting about this is when I was on the checkout page for Amtrak.com, they didn't offer me 20,000 points. And if they did, frankly, I wouldn't be here talking to you about it today because, and I'm going to talk about this later in the show, but my goal is never to just sign up for run-of-the-mill sign-up bonuses. I don't want your daily offer. I want your best offer. And I'm going to save the rest of that to the end. But they offered me 30,000 points, right? Which, as far as I know, is about as good as you're going to do with this card because every time I book a train ticket on Amtrak, I see an opportunity to sign up for this credit card, and it's always for 20,000 points. So for 10,000, again, if we use the same math equation that we did earlier where you're spending 5,000 points round trip, now you can do 6 trips which brings your sign-up bonus from, say, $500 something to over $700, right? And again, everybody's use case is going to be a little bit different. You can actually get even more value out of this depending on what type of trains you're booking. But in my experience, this is actually a really good program. And the 30,000 points piqued my interest. So at this point, I did what I always do in terms of trying to understand what type of value this card is going to bring to me both in the short and long term. And if I wasn't traveling, meaning I didn't have any of my podcasting equipment with me, I was basically on vacation, I probably would have done an episode where I signed up for this card live on the show. But of course, I'm talking to you about it a day later, so I didn't do that. But I went through my checklist. So the first thing we always want to look at is what is the sign-up bonus, right? Because remember, when you hit that submit application button on a credit card application, what you're really doing is you are selling a hard inquiry on your credit report plus some sum of money if it has an annual fee that you have to pay for. And in exchange, they're giving you this financial product. And so you have to ask yourself, is this hard inquiry plus this other sum of money worth whatever they're going to give me in exchange? So in this case, a sign-up bonus that I personally value at over $700 is what I was getting in exchange in the short term for $79 annual fee, which is not waived in the first year, and a hard inquiry. I thought that was pretty valuable, right? And just as a quick refresher, right, a hard inquiry is not it's different from a soft inquiry. So when you go on creditkarma.com and you look at your credit report, that is called a soft inquiry. And it's considered soft because you're not looking at your report in hopes of acquiring additional credit. Whereas with a hard inquiry, you're saying to a bank, hey, please look at my credit. I want you to, prove to yourself that I'm worthy. And that is a hard inquiry because people are looking at your report as a means of making a decision whether or not to extend you additional lines of credit. Right? And of course, those things go on your credit report. They fall off after about 24 months, and they will adversely affect your score in the short term. Although, because your revolving utilization can go down, it tends to even itself out. And I've written, I think, extensively on how your credit score is derived. And if I haven't done a podcast about it, I will. But certainly check out pursuingpoints.com if you're interested in more information about how your score is derived, or reach out to me if you have any questions. So, with all of that, $700 plus sign-up bonus in exchange for a $79 annual fee and a hard inquiry. Now, to unlock the bonus, I have to spend $1,000 in 3 months, which is non-trivial, but it's also not as much as, say, what I have to do with the Wells Fargo Propel card that I signed up on this show, which is $3,000 in 3 months. So, I mean, $1,000 is, anytime you get a bonus worth this much for that sum of money, it's a pretty good deal in my opinion. And of course, you always have to be careful and ask yourself and be honest with yourself, am I spending money that I otherwise wouldn't spend, or that I don't need to spend or shouldn't spend just because I'm trying to get the sign-up bonus? And if the answer is ever yes, you probably have to take inventory, right, and sort of reassess. But in this case, $1,000, I'm not super concerned about it, and I'm happy with the short-term gains. From the longer-term perspective, right, like after I get the sign-up bonus, what value does this card have, and will it have a place in my wallet year over year? Well, we can look at those things. So first of all, you get a 5% points rebate anytime you redeem points for travel on Amtrak, meaning in the example that I used above, where I'm going to spend 22,381 points for one way in business class from New York to Philly, I would actually get back 119 points as a result of that redemption each way. And so the 5% rebate adds, in my calculation, about $40 to the sign-up bonus, which is good. And of course, for the duration of the lifetime that you have this card, it's going to continue to add some sort of value. The earning structure for this card is you get 3 points per dollar on Amtrak purchases, 2 points per dollar on pretty much all other travel purchases, and then 1 point per dollar on every other purchase. So the 3 points on Amtrak alone are worth upwards of 7%. The travel is actually really good as far as earning rates are concerned. It's basically a 5% return when you spend your money on travel. The thing to obviously, keep in mind is that you can only use these points on Amtrak. So they're not super flexible, which means that, like, for me, I'm not going to put travel spend on this card, at least in the long term, because I still get more value out of using my Chase Sapphire Reserve, which, quote unquote, only earns 3 points per dollar on travel. But because I think that those points are more valuable for me in the long term, that's what I'll continue to use. But still, the 3-2-1 structure here I think is really positive. It has no foreign transaction fees. For me, that's more of a checkbox than a feature, but happy to see it. Complimentary companion coupon. Basically, this is basically a buy one, get one free. If you can use this year over year, this will pretty much make up for your entire annual fee, at which point you get all these other benefits sort of for free. You get a complimentary lounge pass every year. I tried to go in the Club Asila Lounge in New York last time I was taking an Amtrak, and I was told I was not allowed to buy a day pass in the lounge, which I thought was super lame. I guess you have to buy them online, or I don't know. But frankly, the lounge to call it a lounge, I think is pretty generous, right? It was a quiet area with a few nicer seats. I think they had some coffee and maybe a few snacks. But I mean, when I think about these lounges, they're nowhere near what I think of when I think of like an Amex Centurion or even a Sky Miles lounge, like some of the better lounges in airports. But I don't necessarily know if that's what they're for, right? I think people for whom Amtrak travel is a regular occurrence, they're probably a nice escape. In my case, this lounge pass doesn't really add a ton of value for the sign-up bonus for me, but I appreciate having it. And as soon as I get my lounge pass, I will obviously use it, and I will probably report back on pursuingpoints.com with whatever I find. You get a complimentary one-class upgrade. So this is one space available, one-way, one-class upgrade. You can go from coach to business or from a Asila business to a Asila first class. For me, I really value this about $30 because that's how much I pay to sit in business as opposed to coach on my New York to Philly trains. Obviously, you might be able to get more value out of this, and frankly, you probably can. But because of my sort of limited travel with this program, I value this at about $30. So all those things considered, I have to ask myself, is it still worth it? I started around $750. Now I get the free upgrade, which is $30. I get the buy one, get one, which I don't know if I'll be able to use, but if I can, that in and of itself adds about anywhere from, say, 80 all the way up to 100 and some odd dollars. So frankly, we're closing in on $1,000 worth of value for these 30,000 points. So the answer to my question for myself was absolutely you should sign up for this card, and that's what I did. I went through the application process. I verified my identity. I was instantly approved, and I was actually able to pay for yesterday's train purchase using this card, which was a really interesting thing, and I wasn't totally expecting it, but basically I clicked on apply now at checkout, and once I was done with the whole process, it said, do you want to pay with this card? And I said yes. So I got 3 points per dollar on yesterday's $100 and some odd dollar transaction, which is fantastic. That's like 10% to the sign-up bonus goal, plus I earned the 300 some odd points for having completed that spend, which I'm super excited about. Of course, I don't have the card yet. This was only 24 hours ago that I signed up, but I'm looking forward to unlocking the rest of the benefits. So the thing I want to talk about for the last however long this takes is basically the strategy behind acquiring this product. And what I think are the two sort of, tactics involved. So again, like I said, I have been aware of this card for as long as I've been traveling on Amtrak, which isn't that long, but I've always been aware of it. I've always seen the sign-up bonus as 20,000 points. And my feeling has always been, I don't want to sign up for cards until I either A, need them, or B, the benefits are so good that for me to say no would be more expensive than for me to say yes. Right? Like it's all about opportunity cost, which is actually something I talked about in the credit card stacking episode and in that long article that I wrote, am I foregoing rewards on product B by spending money on product A? And so with the 20,000 point bonus, as good as it is, the fact that that's their run-of-the-mill everyday bonus just really doesn't do anything for me. I have what I consider to be a pretty strong wallet right now, right? I think I have a few different products that really work well together. They fit the bonus categories that I spend the most money in, which is food and travel. And so I'm not necessarily going out of my way to find new cards to sign up for. Because again, my strategy is much more about understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish, look at where you spend money, and then sign up for cards that can bridge that gap, right? So I'm not interested in churning cards. I'm not interested in signing up for 10 of the same products and whatnot, because frankly, I don't think it's a viable long-term strategy, okay? So in this case, I had just signed up for the Wells Fargo Propel on this show a couple weeks ago, which had a $300/30,000 point sign-up bonus after you spend $3,000 in 3 months. No annual fee. I think it's a terrific card. It has some good ancillary benefits as well. So I wasn't looking for a new card. But when this opportunity presented itself, and I went through this sort of process of understanding the value and the costs, I felt like there was no good reason for me to turn this offer down. Right? I travel on Amtrak a number of times a year. I foresee myself continuing to do that for the next several years. And so really what this card is an investment. The difference is that rather than just sign up because I felt like it, I was patient and I waited until it was too good of an offer to refuse. And if you're saying, well, like, oh, what if it goes to 40,000 points tomorrow? Won't you be upset? Probably, frankly, right? Like, yeah, I mean, I will be sad that I missed out on what would have been a better deal. But based on what I know about this product, I think that's very unlikely. I've only ever seen it at 20,000. Now it's at 30. And because I'm happy to be patient and wait for good offers, I don't have to worry about things like, am I over 524? Like, is this going to hurt me for my next sign up? For me, that Wells Fargo Propel was the first hard inquiry on my credit report since I signed up for the Bank of America Premium Card, right? Which was close to a year ago now. So I'm not interested in signing up for cards on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. What I'm interested in doing, like I said, defining my goals, understanding where I spend money, finding cards that can maximize that. And I think that this card fits the bill. So patience, if you get nothing else out of this 30-minute talk, patience in the credit card game is super important, right? Once you've done those high-level things as far as defining your goals and whatnot, being patient and waiting for good offers is super, super important, right? Now, is Chase ever going to come out with another 100,000 point Sapphire Reserve sign-up bonus? I think it's highly, highly unlikely, right? And so if you spend a lot of money on travel and dining and all you're getting back is, say, 1% on your bank-issued MasterCard, I would say that you should probably sign up for the Sapphire Reserve. Right? But if you're like me and you're spending money on Amtrak a couple times a year, or for you it's some other category like gas stations or grocery stores, I don't think you necessarily need to sign up for whatever the most popular card is immediately. I think if you're going to earn, say, 1.5% on your Freedom Unlimited, be happy with those points. But keep an eye on those other products which earn more in the same categories. And when the sign-up bonus increases, strike. I think that if you do that over the long term, you'll do a couple things, which is it'll benefit your credit score. You won't have to worry about having like all of these hard inquiries and dealing with Chase or Bank of America or any one of these banks doing what they call like personal reviews. I've been reading about, and I'm considering doing an episode about this. I'd love to hear if you guys are interested. If you want to send me an email or leave a comment, there's been these articles circulating about how Chase is shutting people down, right? They're closing all of their credit card accounts, and people are freaking out. Frankly, and I'll toot my own horn a little bit, I believe that if you follow the advice that I've laid out, as far as like being patient and doing those types of things, that will never happen to you. The people for whom that is a reality are choosing to subvert the rules and play outside of the system, and then everybody's upset when they're punished for those things. And certainly I think that there are some false negatives, and Chase probably shut some people down they shouldn't. They probably keep some people open that they shouldn't. But to even be in a position where they're considering that with you is not a place that you want to be, right? And I don't think it's much of a surprise that like the people for whom that's a reality, they're doing a lot of manufactured spending where they're buying all these sorts of credit cards. They're opening up a ton of the same accounts. They're trying to take advantage of all these sign-up bonuses. Everybody wants something for nothing, and I totally get it, which is why when stuff like the 100,000 point reserve offer comes out, everybody jumped on it. But at the end of the day, that's only going to last a short while. And in the long term, it's about your strategy and the tactics that you apply on a daily basis that are going to make the difference between having no real rewards potential and the limitless rewards potential that we're sort of all after. So take that for what you will. I really enjoyed this episode. I'm really excited about this new credit card. I think it's going to benefit my wallet super well. And of course, today I wasn't planning on doing an episode about this, but like I said, the opportunity presented itself. I had to take advantage. What I'm planning on doing in the future, I want to do a full sort of wallet rundown of mine, where I look at all the products that I have and sort of go through this process of saying, should I keep this? Should I cancel this? And get rid of the dead weight that's in the wallet, right? I have some products which I never spend money on that offer no ancillary benefits. And in some cases, there's still reasons to keep them. And those are mainly because they benefit my credit score. But in other cases, there's really no reason to. And so I know that one of the biggest credit card myths is that you should never cancel a card. I've written extensively about that. I encourage you to check it out. But the reality is you can cancel credit cards. You just have to understand how it's going to affect you. And once you do, you should have no problem. So I'm going to get into that on future episodes as far as doing the spring cleaning and whatnot. I've been writing a bunch of content on pursuingpoints.com that I'd love for you all to check out. And I'm actually thinking about starting and doing some YouTube videos as well, which would be shorter form, but sort of just me talking to the camera like the way I'm talking to this microphone right now. If you think that that's something that you might be interested in checking out, let me know. As always, questions, comments, you guys know where to find me, pursuingpoints.com/contact, or you can just email peter@pursuingpoints.com. Thank you for listening. Enjoy the rest of your Labor Day, and I will see you next week.